Yeah. Nice. I'm gonna be right back. I'm gonna grab something to drink and then we'll start. So basically, in the beginning, the only two paints that we're gonna use are black and white. And I'm using gold and so flats because I like the way they dilute. And because they are pure pigments. No, you don't really need it. Just make sure that the paints that you're using are some that you have under control, basically. Yeah, well, if that is the case, then that's basically all you need to begin with. I'm just gonna make 2 reservoirs of black and white because we're gonna be mixing these together to create different shades of gray. The white has a model on top of it, but ignore that. I tend to use my paint pots as model holders. Yeah? Side quest? So, ladies and gentlemen, we have the blade here. I'm gonna zoom in a little bit so you get as much of the magic as is possible. Let me bring that up a little bit. There we go. What we're gonna do first is we're gonna take the black that we applied and we're gonna reapply it to the blade, even though you've painted it black with a primer. You can simply use this as a way to ensure that if you make a mistake down the line, you can just easily paint it back. Now, normally I wouldn't fuss about this, but because we're using a little bit of an advanced way of painting something, you kind of want to have as much control as possible. And I'm doing this undiluted because the paint that I'm using is quite thin. No wet palette? Okay. You could use unoiled baking sheets. Make sure you catch everything with the black. Do the other side of the blade as well, because at some point, once we've done one side, you should try the other one on your own knowledge, power, and ability. Because it's basically copying what we did on the other side. And the reason we're using white and black is because we can just use different shades of gray by easily making followable mixtures of white and black. Man, it is so easy. I can't believe it's not butter. I will be moving my wet palette a little bit so I can show you guys as well how I apply my brush. My brush to paper as well, because we're gonna use glazing for this one. There you go. Nice piece of white paper. I'm gonna let this dry, and then what we're gonna do is we're gonna take a smaller brush and we're gonna start applying whites for the highlights. Yeah. And this is basically your base of operations, this black. So I'm gonna let it dry over here a little bit, and then we can start working from there. And I'm gonna use the shape of the blade to help me out. So we're gonna do an easy approach. I did this one with one of the students one-on-one. But basically what we're gonna be looking to do is do as basic an MM as possible so you understand the basics. Wow. Such wise. Just buy a blow dryer. Now that it is dry, we will take a small brush with a sharp tip, and we're going to sketch out the highlights with white. I'm going to do this easy peasy lemon squeezy. We're just going to scratch it on. Now what I do is I take off a little bit on my glove to have more control, and then basically just scratch it on there. Not looking for perfection. This will be the area where the brightest spots will be. Now normally you would, something like this you'd paint with what's it called, like an electric effect or something special like magic due to the node over there. Sorry? Up and down. Yeah, to the length of the blade. And the reason you're doing this is because those strokes will help your will help with the suspension of disbelief, basically. And I'm using acrylic paints, just to clarify. We want the center of these surfaces to be as wide as possible. The rest doesn't really matter. You can be quite rough with it. I'm gonna paint over it anyway. Then we take a little bit of white, we put it down, and then we wash our brush because we don't want to contaminate our initial reservoirs. Then we take a little bit of black, put it down next to it, take a little bit of more black, and then take the third dollop of black. We're going to mix those two together. You're going to make gray, exactly. We're going to brush that on the opposite sides. We're going to do that the same way as we did with the white. Paint it on in such a way that you're using scratches along the length of the blade. Basically what I did is 3 black to 1 white. Now we have our darkest spots. We're gonna cross over it again to make sure that the layer fully covers. Now I'm using quite thin layers, so when I blow on the model, it should help out with coverage and drying. With this one as well, you can be quite rough. We're just sketching it on. Doesn't matter if you cross. You don't want to cross the centers, but you want those as wide as possible. So this was 3 to 1. What we're going to do now is we're going to do white once, white twice, then white 3 times. And we're going to flip that formula to 1 black. We're going to mix those two together. And what we're going to do is we're going to scratch it in between all the spots that we haven't touched yet. You can cross the sections with the other bits a little bit. And now basically what we're going to do is we're going to start mixing colors and making glazes in order to make them transition nicely. What? You're out of glaze? You can just make your own. I use my previous mixture and just apply it to some of the places to darken it down nicely. We're gonna go darker again at some point, but we're just gonna use in between colors So we have the 3-2-1, 3 white, 1 black. We're gonna add a little bit of white to it, make it a little bit brighter, and then we're gonna push that in between these two, the white and the dark gray. We're gonna push that towards the darker gray, and then from here on at this angle, the same thing. The dilute, yeah, you dilute about let's say about 3 droplets of water to 1 paint. Yeah. And then we take the dark gray that we made, take that aside, take a little bit of white again, mix that in, got a bit of a dark version of the earlier mixture that we made. We're gonna blend that or paint that in between the black and the gray, like so. Doesn't really matter where you push it for now. You should already start seeing some like transitions on your blade, rough ones. Correct. Now we know that this one over here is 3 black to 1 white. This one here is 3 white to 1 black. This one is this mixture with a dollop of white. This one is this mixture with a dollop of white. And now we're going to start pushing those colors together using a glaze. So I'll be doing over here, you can already see that there's a wet spot, nice and wet. We're going to start making new mixtures using those colors as a guide. And we're going to make glazes out of them. I'm going to do a 3 white to 1 black again, but this time I'm going to turn it into a glaze. Which means that I take water, just use my brush, the tiny brush that we're using to apply the scratches. Give me 1 second. There we go. We're gonna just push that next to it. Then again, moisten the brush to get a droplet of water on there. And we're gonna use that to glaze the edge down to a very thin consistency, like so. Then you use your paper to brush it off, like so, still until it starts blooming, and then we go from the black into the gray, and from the black into the gray, black into the gray, and then the black into the gray, this angle, that angle, and over here. And then we're going to take those 1, 2, 3 whites. Then you're gonna add a little bit of black. Make a new mixture. So you got like a off-white, a grayish color. Clean your brush. Clean it well. We're gonna do the same thing. We're gonna make a glaze out of that. Glaze it, baby. So drop a lot of water next to here. Anywhere you have room to move and push it around. Load up the brush. You get like a really thin, milky consistency, which is basically micro layers of paint that you're gonna apply. Flick it off on the paper until it almost doesn't cover anymore. Like so. And then we're gonna move from the white into the gray, white into the gray, white into the gray, white into the gray, and so on and so forth. And there you should already start seeing minor transitions in the smoothness of the paint. Sorry? Are you doing it? Are you applying it yourself as well? Cool. Then we take a bit of the black grayish mixture again. Flick it off on your paper until it's like thin. And then we're gonna go black to gray again. The other side as well. And then we're gonna take the light gray again. We're gonna do the same. Flick it off on your paper until you get like this consistency. It's a little bit too thick still, so I'm gonna take a little bit of water, apply it to my light mixture. Just keep the droplet in the brush. Flick it off, and here you can see it's a bit thinner. We're gonna go white to gray, white to gray, white to gray, white to gray. Here as well. I'm off camera. Oh, sorry. Thank you. Now, we have smoothened some of the transitions out. So now we're going to take pure white again. Going to take that separately. And then we're going to push those highlights even more. So what we're going to do is we're going to make a glaze out of the white. Flick it off on your paper until the paint starts to like bloom out. And it's very thin now. And then we do the same thing, but we go and back into the white. So out and back. You can do it one side, so you can just do it like this. start in the gray, like the bright gray. You don't want to completely start in the dark gray. Push it back. Same thing up here, into the white. As you can see, you've got a very dark spot over there, a very dark spot over there, and a very dark spot over there. Very bright spot over here, very bright spot over there, and a very bright spot over there. So what we've basically done is we've already started blending these together. But this will all tie together like magic once we have the final layers down. So what we're going to be doing now is we're just going to be building it towards one another. All those colors. Yeah, so glazing in general is just testing how thick the paint on your brush is, like I'm showing on my glove continuously. That's why you see all those stripes there. Is to see what the thickness is of my paint. Could be. It might also be that the white you're using has very thick granules. Thin one, we go black, but we go gray to black. Here again, sure. Gray to black, gray to black. And then here again, gray to black, gray to black. And that same thing with white. Thin layer. Flick it off to get most of the moisture out. Check out your picture in a second. And then we're going to gray to white. Gray to white. Gray to white. Gray to white. You can also already start playing a little bit with the like edge highlights and stuff like that. But as you can see here, for example, where it already starts drying, it's not as present a white as you'd think it would be. Let me check the chat real quick. Okay, your biggest issue is the letters on the blade. However, I feel like you can either thin your white a bit more, and I don't know your paint, but it looks like it's applied fairly thickly still, so you might want to thin them down more, and you might want to take out the like test the basically the thickness of your paint on your hand more. Like I'm using the glove basically to, you know, be able to take it off and go to bed afterwards, but you maybe you want to practice some on your skin. So we can take white. Doesn't really matter, you can continue, but just see that you can better understand the how do you say this? The consistency of your paint. So basically what I'm doing here already is painting out again the highlight. To reestablish that brightness. Oop. And I'm doing that with a slightly diluted white. It's fairly thick still. I'm gonna bring those highlights back in just to have like a proper guide. And this line in the middle, for example, you can already start pulling it on. If you're uncomfortable doing it like so with the tip of your brush, you just use the side to guide along. You can also do it to the outside here already and start pulling it through. Normally you would not highlight this if this was aimed downward, but and just use the side of your brush to already start applying your highlights, and as you can see, it's already starting to look more like NMM. So we take a little bit more of that slightly diluted white. Make sure we flick a little bit of the brush empty on our hand. Then we're gonna bring in those highlights again. And you paint from the outside inward towards your highlight. Make a little like upside down U. Again. Again. Oh, I think I took the wrong guide. Hold on. There we go. Like so. And then we reapply it over here. And again, a little like upside down U. And because we've diluted the white a little bit, it will not fully cover, so it'll be a part of the transitions we're building in. And just make sure that your brush strokes end within the center where your highlight would be brightest. And if you need help, you can just flick your blade around. I do this all the time. I do some sort of like, miniature yoga at some points. It's fairly thin already, so I'm gonna add a little bit of white to that little dollop. We're just working with whites now. Don't worry about the rest. Also, don't worry about the end result. We're working towards that, and we're not there yet. Make sure you have a comfortable grip. Basically what I'm doing is I'm just brushing down into the areas where the highlights would make sense. Now we have a harsh transition. We're going to clean that up. Going to be taking that gray mixture that we made earlier, and as you can see here, there's still a little bit of gray ahead of the blade of the white, so we don't want it that thick. We're going to take a little bit of water, dilute it, make it into a glaze, flick your brush off onto your paper, check the thickness of your glaze, which this looks alright, and we're going to brush from the white into the gray. Oops. And then from this end, don't push it out too far, just follow your original shape. Now this harsens out the transitions again, but doesn't really matter because we're gonna work on smoothing those out. There you go. Oh. We take a lot of water on the brush, take our previous darker gray mixture, which is 2 black, 1 white. And now we go from the gray into the black. And just on the bit that you just touched up. And then from the other end again. Gonna have to twist this around. Like so. Like so. And this will bring out the darkness again, but as you can see, it's not fully closing it. You can still see like a harsh transition right over here. Doesn't matter. We're gonna go back to that black. Still have to push it the other end, to the other side. Go back in. Go from here over there. And then the other way around again. What? Yeah. And over here again. On the other end again. Over here again. And here you can see it's already starting to look more and more like a simplified NMM, right? This is basically like one of the simplest ways to do it. We're gonna make another mixture again. Let's make it here yes, that is why we're doing it with black and white, because this can be any two colors. But I'm gonna show you at the end a simple way to give it a color, or the idea of a color. I'm gonna take a little bit of extra white in this mixture. Brighten it way the hell up, because we're gonna make white transitions to make it look even more believable. Another glaze we're gonna make out of it. We're gonna keep this mixture alive, so we're gonna take that aside for the glaze, because the glaze doesn't need a lot of paint. Gonna have to move it a little bit to the side. Too thick. This is basically all I'm using this for in order to understand the thickness of the paint that I am about to apply. Now this looks way more watered down, which is what we want. We're going to build up small layers. White to gray again. Don't push fully into the middle. And then the other way around. So from gray into white. Gray into white, not fully the center. And then the same here. Same over here. And then a little bit at the tippy top over here. Now you can make these as big as small as you want. These like gaps and the like. between the black and the gray. Yeah. Yeah, the light spots. I put a little bit of that previous mixture into my brush. Oop. Flick it off. A little bit again in the tippy top. Over here. Just scratch it on over here. Scratch it on over there. There you go. Thanks, man. And then a little bit over here. Just scratch it on. Put it into place. It's so thin you won't necessarily see it. But it'll help with the transition down the line. We go back to a little bit of black. This can be a bit thicker, it doesn't really matter. And you just brush it into the black spots again, small pieces to help with that transition. This one I'll just push against that item. And let your paints dry fully before you start judging it. Then we take the pure white again. So that's basically fairly undiluted. You take the tip of your brush, and we're gonna reapply the highlight. Now, this for me should be reasonably thin still. Here we're going to scratch in a little bit of a harsher transition. Here, the line in the middle of the blade, just follow it along. And here again, we go white, small, wide, and then wide again. But I'll use another paint in a moment to bring that out more, the white. Another white that I also use, which is a bit thicker. And then here again, highlight white, a little bit smaller, small, wider again, and then outwards again. Now, we have a little bit of a harsh transition here, which doesn't really matter because light reflections can be fairly harsh. But as you can see, we've already moved into the non-metallic metal areas. Now, if you want this transition over here softer, you go to your light grays again, flick it off on your paper, and then basically scratch it on again. And push it upwards. This one, push it inwards. This one as well, push it inwards towards your whites. Here again, towards your grays. And then here again, towards your grays and whites. Now, I will take my Vallejo dead white, which is this one. It's a nice and thick paint. Now, as you can see, like it's not metal like it would behave in nature. However, there is a non-metallic metal effect, and because we've scratched upwards, downwards, upwards to the length of the blade, it sells easier. Yeah. Yeah. You're basically pulling sort of a Houdini. Now, you don't need this much paint, but there's pressure in my little bottle. Oh, 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 oh. Oh, never mind. Now, I take the white from Vallejo, which is nice and thick, like so. And we're gonna edge highlight the blade again. You can play around with the brightness and the sharpness of the reflections. Give it a little bit more of a playfulness approach. Make sure to clean your brush properly with the in between to make sure that the rough white colors won't persist in your brush. And as I told you, if you have trouble by using the tip of your brush, basically what you do is you apply a little pressure and use the side of your brush to color in the middle. There you go. Then we take the side. And this one, because it's pointing upwards, we're basically gonna brighten it up fully. There you go. Now, cleaning up. We see here a fairly harsh transition still. So we take the black, flick it off on our paper, test the thickness, and because we have a lot of white, we can just, check what it does with the white. And it barely intercepts it, so we can go a little bit thicker due to the black we're brushing towards, which is gonna look like this, and just remain within your highlight lines. Here, harsh transition still, small touches. Now I find these transitions here fairly harsh. I'm gonna go to my gray-white mixture that is fairly thick still, which is like about this consistency. I'm gonna scratch it in here. Oh. What? Oh yeah, no, I did. This little part of the top wasn't fully in view. So I'm gonna move back and forth to my whites now to help with the transitions closer to the highlights. This is nice. So we go from the grays into the white. Gray into white. Other way around. Over here. Over here. Dark gray mixture. Worry that down a little bit. Mine is already dried up a bit, but it's also god dang hot in this attic, mate. Check consistency again. Fairly thin. You're gonna brush this into your previous layers. Again? That is actually a smart idea. Basically, this is just fucking up in a certain order until you feel like you've gotten it. And that will always happen with some of the final lines that you do, because this is just a cleanup process. That's basically it, man. There's already a PDF out that I did with you can use that, you can use this. No. A what? OSL on NMM is basically used in the entire process that we did from the beginning. And integrating the colors of the light that you're using. So I'm using a fairly stubborn brush to bring in the whites again. Has a sharp point, sharp tip. And then I'll show you once I'm done how to add some color and liveliness to it. So this is thick paint to help with the with bringing back the highlights, anything that we might have lost in the glazing that we just did. I can't get in real close now due to the lights and camera being in the way. Normally I have this up to my face and I lay down really thin lines. And now I take my small brush that we've basically been using the entire time. Put a little dot here. Put a little dot on there. And if you want to push it even more, make a sharp tip on the brush. You can basically start scratch in a little bit of shine lines. You can just use pure white for this, scratch them on any and everywhere, because indentations will reflect it any and everywhere. Everywhere. Oop. And I'm basically still using the undiluted or semi-undiluted Vallejo over this. There you go. You have your NMM. Is this the best you can do? Obviously not. You will grow beyond this and you will make it look even better. And then basically I want to challenge you to do the same thing to the other end. Once you've done this side. Or if you're not confident, obviously you start with this side because it wouldn't be visible on the model. And then you... Well, kind of depends. No, it's basically the same process. You wanna glaze it down, start or make tiny scratches. Now let's say you want to give it a little bit of color or a feel of a color. I'm gonna take Liquitex ink, and you're gonna make a little droplet. Now red is really pigmented. Let me move my palette down a little bit so people can actually see what I'm doing. Red. And I'm gonna use an older brush of mine. It can crawl up your brush fairly quickly. I'm gonna take like 2 droplets. As you can see, it's already like thickly into the brush. Bases, the ferrule. So thin it down. As you can see, there's a lot of red still here. Let me show you on my glove. Nice and thin already. Add a little bit of water. Take it off. And then we're going to apply it. Now this is also turning magenta due to the color mixture of the reds. And now if you want to bring the highlights back and you want them to correspond with, you take the white, like the undiluted Vallejo dead white. I'm gonna make quite a dollop because the pigments are so rich of the red. Want to give it a little bit of the red hue. You basically want it almost invisible. But you want it to have like that reddish hue to it. And then we're going to reapply that. As you can see, it's barely visible, the red. I don't even know if the camera's catching it, but you can see it on the palette that it's a different shade of... yeah. Basically what I was doing is edge highlighting the edges with this mixture. Yeah, that's also because of the mixture that we made, the grays. Yeah, and if you want to like take the proper route of creating that, you're going to use actually those colors. But for now, this is a simple way of getting the result you want. We're going to scratch back a little bit of the highlighting. Yeah, go ahead. And then we go to the white again. And we're basically gonna color in the whites, pure whites, just in that little middle. Might as well show it on camera, Jesus. Sorry, lads. And over here. There you go. A visually interesting non-metallic metal sword. Within about an hour and 20 minutes. It almost looks prismatic, but you can basically use any color of ink. And you can push this up more, this highlight more up, like have them like easily divided within the middle. But if you do this on one of your models, it's basically, you know, like Captain Worthy or something. And you can go back with the whites and do these scratches again and add to that and bring it to life more. You can keep going and going and going and going, but there you go. NM. The most easy and practical application.